The wait is finally over. Godot 4 is out. Yay! If you didn't download it already, head over to the Godot website, don't wait. In this video, I want to quickly talk about the biggest new features of Godot 4, but also discuss the missing ones, or the things that are still not completely perfect. This video is not a complete list of what's new, and if you want that, I believe GDQuest made one, so check it out after this one. Godot 4.0 has been in development for years now, and the amount of changes is so high we can virtually consider it a new engine. I believe Godot 4 is a huge step forward and will probably attract even more people to the engine, and not just amateurs. My biggest concern is that this version has been hyped way too much. I'm afraid that some people will be disappointed because not everything is perfect, but we'll discuss that later, so let's start with what's new. Godot 4 is using a new renderer, and I think it's one of the most important things. Godot has moved to Vulkan, allowing the engine to have more high-end, up-to-date and future-proof rendering techniques. With that comes new lighting techniques such as SDFGI, better shadows, and volumetric fog, but also automatic LODs, occlusion culling, and better overall performance, allowing you to push your game to the next level. It's also important to note the support of AMD FSR, an upscaling technology similar to NVIDIA DLSS. Don't worry though, as Godot still has older renderer, making it possible to support older and mobile devices. Of course, you'll lose some of the new features when using these renderers. GDScript 2.0 is the next version of the built-in scripting language for Godot. With that comes many new features to make using GDScript even more a breeze. The language is less reliant on strings overall and brings lots of quality of life features such as lambda functions, await, typed arrays, more coherence in the method namings, new twinning system, custom resources, exporting nodes, and much more. Each of these features would require their own part as they are quite important. But the new twinning system is personally the one I love the most. It has been backported in 3.5 so you're probably already using it. The multiplayer API has been reworked, trying to make multiplayer easier by simplifying the synchronization and replication. If you want to learn more, you can read their blog post on the subject. The new particle system is much more powerful, supporting trails, sub-emitters, collision, turbulence, and attractors. Compute shaders are now available. These are more flexible and can be used to make calculations that don't necessarily need outputting to the screen. It's basically a tool to do general purpose programming on the GPU, making it essential for heavy calculations that can be parallelized. The new navigation system is way better, supporting moving objects for collision avoidance, streaming navigation regions, the runtime navigation baking, and more. GDExtension is a new system to enhance Godot's capabilities. It will replace GDNative, which was a way to add functionality to Godot on a low level without forcing the user to recompile the engine. The other solution was to write modules, but they required the engine to be recompiled with them and compiled for each target devices, Linux, Windows, etc. GDNative was limited and didn't have access to the full C++ engine API like modules did. GDExtension aims at the same ease of use of GDNative with the deep access of modules. GDExtension is super powerful and could be used to add another physics engine, create bindings with other languages, or even add other renderer to the engine. If you're interested in this, Flame Lizard made a tutorial on how to write your first extension, link in the description. Godot Physics is replacing bullets. It's supposed to be faster and more reliable, and it also supports soft bodies. This is for both 2D and 3D. We also see changes in the way kinematic bodies are handled, and lots of the parameters that you used to pass to in the functions are now properties included directly in the node itself, allowing to easily tweak the parameters from the editor. OpenXR is now built into the engine, thus you don't need to use a plugin to develop for VR. Of course, you also have access to the Godot XR Tools plugin with basic features to get you started faster with VR. The MovieMaker node allows to record non-real-time video, aka offline rendering, directly from the editor. This makes recording cutscenes, game trailers, procedurally generated animations, or motion design much easier. This makes it possible to use any graphics settings and render at a higher resolution than your screen resolution. You can also render at a higher frame rate to compute high-quality motion blur, for example. This doesn't replace OBS or any other capturing software to record gameplay or stream, though. In 2D, we also have some changes, and one of the biggest is the new Tilemap system, with new atlas editing, properties array for collision, occlusion, etc., drawing large tiles, and new layer system. The Tilemap is apparently still missing features that were used in 3.x, which can make it difficult to port from 3.x to 4.0. There has been some discussion over this in the past few weeks, and we'll probably see more updates in the near future. Those are the biggest features I noted, but Godot 4 is also full of small quality of life features, such as the new input map, allowing you to very easily add new actions, the make unique recursive, which will go through all of the sub-resources to make them unique too, super useful when working with particles materials for example, the ability to see the history on each node, the shader globals, allowing many shaders to share the same uniform, per instance uniforms, which is the ability to tweak a shader per node without having to create a new unique material for each of them, naming layers directly in the collision zone, debug shapes well visible and customizable, better templates available per node, supports for right to left languages, ability for sprites to clip their children, support for canvas group, allowing to draw overlapping translucent 2D nodes without blending for example, and much more. It's possible some of the features I talked about were already available in 3.5 because some of them were backported. Of course, converting to Godot 4.0 might seem frightening, but there's a built-in tool that will help you with that. It's not perfect, but it's doing most of the work for you. They're always trying to make it better, so it'll be even easier with time. The simpler your game is, the easier porting will be. Please make sure to create a backup before updating to Godot 4. The upgrade will change your file and will break compatibility with 3.x. With all those changes come problems and limitations. Godot 4.0 releases because most of the important features are stable. This doesn't mean that everything is finished and completely bug-free. For example, there's no glow in 2D, as HDR is being reworked and it's not ready yet. If your game relies on glow, you might have to wait for 4.1 or later. I talked about it briefly, but the new tilemap isn't unanimously loved. There are still missing features such as rotating tiles. A new IK system was introduced for 4.0, but has been pushed back unfortunately as it was a huge change and wasn't ready for 4.0. I recently discovered a bug with the color picker eyedropper which makes it unusable. Talking with the developer of Object Wars, a 3D online multiplayer game using Godot 4, he confessed that some of the newest features were cool but still unusable for him. Real-time shadows and SDFGI were still not usable as they have too much of a performance hit. The animation tree seems to be impacting negatively the FPS. The particles have performance problem, probably due to the shader's instantiation or other things. To him, Godot 4 is very promising, but still not at the level of performance needed for bigger games. Also, not really a problem per se, but a limitation is the lack of resources. Right now, not all of the plugins you'll find on the asset store will support Godot 4, and you might be lacking the knowledge to port them yourself. Also, lots of the tutorials are made for Godot 3. While I believe you can adapt pretty easily what is said for Godot 3 to Godot 4, I understand it might be confusing as a beginner. But don't worry, the content is coming for sure, and as the usage will grow, we'll have more plugins, tutorials, and extensions to choose from. I'm personally working on a course on game juice using Godot 4, stay tuned for that. Most of the problems and limitations are not huge deal breakers, but they surely should be taken into account when choosing to use Godot 4 or not for your next project. Speaking of that, let's discuss if you should use Godot 4 right now. I think it's actually quite easy to know if you should take the jump and switch to Godot 4. Let's start with amateurs. If you're learning game dev or creating games for fun, I believe you should start with Godot 4 today. There's no reason to wait, as Godot 4 is the future of the engine. It comes with many quality of life features and is stable enough to start learning and having fun with it. That said, as I pointed out earlier, there might be a lack of content available initially, but don't worry, this will be fixed fast as most of the tutorial makers will start using Godot 4 if they didn't already. If you make games or apps commercially, it's a different subject. You need stability more than anything, especially if you don't feel comfortable fixing engine bugs yourself. I think there are two use cases to consider. If you're currently working on a game with 3.x that will soon release, let's say in the next 6 months maybe, I think you should stay with 3.5 because it's the most stable version yet. Same thing if you're starting a new project but you aim at releasing pretty fast. If you still decide to use Godot 4 because you want or need a new feature, or you need a fix that is not backported, I would take the time to make sure that every feature you use in your game is stable enough for you. Now, if you're working on a much bigger project that will not release in the next month, I think it's totally safe and even a good idea to use Godot 4. You will benefit from the new rendering capabilities and quality of life features, and the engine will become even more stable and feature complete with the next versions. In our case, I think it's important to be safe and make sure you have access to the features you need. Godot needs people to start using the latest stable version, as it's the only way to build the product that everyone needs. Your support is extremely useful, and by using it, giving feedback, reporting bugs, and maybe even fixing them, you're participating in building a better engine for everyone. Don't forget, you can also support the project financially if you're in capacity, of course. Godot 4.0 is a huge milestone, and it will only keep getting better in the future. 4.0 marks the beginning of a new era for the engine, turned towards the future of game creation. I want to thank the Godot team and contributors for their amazing work. They're pouring their heart into the engine, and it shows. I also want to thank them personally, as I got into game dev thanks to Godot. Without them, their work, and their amazing engine, I wouldn't be here today as a full-time game dev. So huge thank you for what you've done. I also want to thank you, the community, for your support on my personal game dev journey, and more generally as a really supportive community. Thank you for listening. Start using Godot 4 today. Bye!